Welcome back, everybody. Bit of a different format, bit of a different layout this time. Today we're going to be looking at my first Dynasty mock draft of ever, actually, but of the 2021 offseason. Quick background information on the mock: 12 teams, PPR, Superflex, no tight end premium, and the rookie pick you get is going to be opposite of the startup pick you have. So in this instance, I have the 108 in this draft. In the rookie draft, I'd have the 105, so this guy picks 112 here, rookie 101. Just to clear that up. And I think it's going to be a really interesting time to take a look at my first mock draft, see what I've done, see how I could improve, see what I did well, see what I didn't do so well on, picks I might have done bad on, and just point out a few picks throughout the draft that are both around my picks and just completely off to the side that I think are really interesting for both good or bad reasons. Now we're going to kick it off with my pick at the 1-8. I always like to start with running backs. I like to go heavy running back in both redraft and in Dynasty, and that did not change here. Pretty predictable first three with Mahomes, McCaffrey, and Kamara. Kamara, uncertainty a little bit with the quarterback situation, but I do understand taking a guy of his talent level who's produced this highly. 1-4 is a bit confusing because to me this indicates a win-now move from the jump from the very first round. I thought Jonathan Taylor was going to go here, honestly, given both his end-of-year production to tail out the year and the overall hype surrounding him in that running back class moving forward. Don't hate the pick, I just think it really signals that you're in a win-now mode, given his age and his checkered injury history. Following that up, two quarterbacks, and then Jonathan Taylor at the 1-7, who I almost certainly would have taken if he fell to me, but I definitely had to take Saquon Barkley here. Not huge on him this year, not going to take him super early, like the top 4 if it's me, because I get the injury risk playing in a relatively shoddy offense, but I've seen nothing to indicate that his recovery is going besides anything but swimmingly. I think we know what he can do when he's at full potential. We saw Wayne Gallman string together 4 RB1 weeks in this offense at some point throughout the year. If they add a field stretcher or wide receiver at 11, I think Jalen Waddle is the guy. I almost certainly think that's the pick, barring any drastic moves. I think that's really going to open up the underneath of the field for both the other receivers and Saquon to work as a receiver, and it'll take some stress off of him in terms of facing loaded box all the times because they're going to have to respect the guy with the speed of Waddle. Following that up with my second pick, Zeke goes right before me, and Zeke is a very interesting case because he had a down year, no other way to put it, got hurt towards the end, was not 100%, but he was also playing without Dak, without 4 starting offensive linemen, I believe, and it was just a really shitty situation to be a part of for everybody on that offense from pretty much week 6 onward. Do I think he's the pick in Dynasty at the 2-4? I don't think so, but I understand the thought process of thinking that he's going to get back to his glory, and when Zeke's at the top of his game, there's not many RBs that can outproduce him. But I'd take that opportunity, and a little bit of a wide receiver one that starts off the second round, to take Deandre Swift, who I have immensely high hopes for this year. You've seen Campbell talk about how he wants to use him like Kamara as a slot receiver. Given that they're losing 3 receivers to free agency, that's a great sign. Anthony Lynn made Kalen Ballage fantasy relevant this year, so there's that. Also helped Eckler and Melvin Gordon get multiple RB1 caliber seasons under his belt. And I think he's going to be the focal point of this offense with Jared Goff. I know Goff didn't do a ton of checking down on running backs at the Rams, but I think that could be an indication on the system and how they had to accompany him more than his total play. I think Swift is in for a huge year. His potential is through the roof. He could be a true 3-down back in this offense if they let him rock, and I'm certainly hoping and expecting that that's what happens. So following that through in the second round, a little bit of a quarterback run to start here, people trying to grab those last QB1 options. Herbert at 2-6 after Jonathan Taylor. It's a really nice young core for that guy moving forward. Elite quarterback, elite running back. Kyler Dak is a killer start. I think Dak is going to have an incredible bounce back year. Russ at 2-9 is interesting given Seattle's proclivity to absolutely fuck him for a half of the year, whether it's the first half or the second half that he balls out in. The other half is going to be a run-the-ball fest. It's going to be terrible, but I understand taking a guy who's clearly elite this high in the draft. So you see some more good picks. Akers Dobbins at the 2-12-3-1 is a very nice back-to-back of a young running back core. First tight end comes off the board at 3-4 with Travis Kelsey. I think he's a stud. I think his age is not going to be anything near a deterrent. His play style is going to allow him to keep his career alive for another 4 or 5 years in terms of high-level play. And then we stumble onto my pick at the 3-8. The guy I really wanted here was CeeDee Lamb. Went 2 picks before me. I was eyeing receiver the whole time. as I felt like that last tier of young wide receiver ones who you can build your team around, or at least the wide receiver core, was starting to dwindle pretty fast. So I took Calvin Ridley. 1,400 yards this year almost, produced really nicely with both Julio on and off the field. I think regardless of who's under center, both this year and in 3 years in the future, whether it's Matt Ryan, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, maybe some other guy, I trust Calvin Ridley to produce as the alpha. He's that good, and I think he's talented enough and has shown enough production to warrant this spot in the draft. I think as the wide receiver 9 off the board, here's a pretty good value for a guy who produces at as much of a high level as he does. Following that up, a questionable-ish pick for me at the 310, Baker Mayfield. He had a great year, nice bounce-back year, really needed after the down year they all had. Post-hype Browns, dangerous-ass team. But I don't like Baker Mayfield as your QB1 at this point. Maybe with the 103, he takes another guy like Wilson or Fields, so he's his QB2, which is a bit better. But then why take your QB2 in the tail end of the third round? Don't really get it, especially when it's a guy who's going to need to be really efficient to get you some points. That offense is a running offense first and foremost, then they use that to open up the rest of the field in the passing game. I don't think Baker's ever going to be slinging the ball as much as a guy like Deshaun Watson, Josh Allen, or Justin Herbert is, which is why he's clearly lower amongst other reasons, but I also don't think he's worth taking it this high in the draft. So we swing around, some more older, veteran, proven receivers come off the board, and I'm sitting at the 4-5, and I want another running back. I want one more guy to take, another workhorse, round out my three-headed monster. And of all the guys on the board, I decided to go with James Robinson, the undrafted stud. Popped into Jacksonville, got Leonard Fournette cut, and absolutely balled the hell out off the waiver wire. And I understand with this pick there is a ton of risk. They can replace him in the draft. They can bring in a free agent guy to kind of spell him at points. But I don't really think there's going to be any serious threat to his job security. The Jaguars found an absolute elite talent, high-level talent at the running back position as an undrafted free agent. He's on an incredibly cheap contract, and he's shown the ability to handle a three-down workload as well as produce in an absolutely terrible offense. I personally don't see a need to bring in a running back with an early draft pick, how some people are saying. Some people have them taking Najee Harris in the second. Not only do I think Najee might not make it that far, I think that's a waste of a pick. Because Najee is good, but do you really need to spend that much draft capital after you found a very good running back on the waiver wire pretty much of the NFL? I really don't think so. I think his job is mostly safe. Does he dominate the backfield how he did last year? Maybe not, but I don't think that step back in total workload is going to be anything near enough of a deterrent to scare me off of taking him. Pick, like I said, comes with inherent risk, but he's young, he's very good, he can produce, he's talented. I think it's a pretty nice pick at the 4-5, and it's capitalizing on a lot of the worry and narratives that people have started to turn from opinion to fact about James Robinson. Following that pick, you see Terry McLaurin come off the board, a very nice player. Then a small run of running backs that really, in my opinion, eliminates those first two tiers of guys. I think Montgomery is the cutoff. Everyone afterwards is clearly a tier or two below. Then you see T. Higgins off the board at 4-12. I love the guy. I wish I could have got him on the way back. But that's how the cookie crumbles when you have a very good young receiver who's paired up with an elite young quarterback in Joe Burrow. I think you got to take him there. I like Cooper off the board at 5-2. I think it's a value, honestly. He's still only 26. He's going to be getting Dak Prescott back next year. And in those 4 full games with Dak Prescott healthy, he was the number 1 receiver in all of fantasy last year. I don't think they keep up that catastrophically great pace, but I do think that they will produce at a level somewhat near that, and that Amari Cooper will have a very good season this year, given everybody comes back healthy. Jalen Hurts at the 5-5, given that Philly looks all but likely to trade Carson Wentz to a team that is probably the Bears. This pick was made before that was really settled. I think Hurts at the 5-5 as your quarterback too is a great pick. Konami code type of guy, going to get you a lot of rushing upside. Gives you a really nice floor because we're not really sure how he'll do over a full season as a passer, but we definitely see the rushing potential there. Going to be curious to see how he adapts. A pick afterwards that I don't necessarily like and leads to a very shaky running back room in my opinion is A.J. Dillon. You're basically gambling that Aaron Jones is leaving, which is definitely possible, but I'm not sure I'd personally be comfortable taking a gamble like this in the middle of the 5th round at running back when you can get more proven talent at wide receiver and maybe grab a running back in the rookie draft. I get grabbing your guys, just I'm a bit shaky on that. So it comes to me at the 5'8", and I'm looking for a wide receiver too, as I'm clearly out on the running backs at this point. I think I've drafted well enough to give myself that ability to look towards other positions. Don't see any tight ends really worth taking here, given that Kelsey, Waller, and Kittle are all off the board. So I'm making a decision between some pretty old receivers. There are some young guys still left on the board, but here I go with Keenan Allen, tethered to Justin Herbert for the foreseeable future, which is always a good thing when you're tied to an elite young quarterback like that. Got rid of Anthony Lynn, so hopefully the absolutely anemic offensive play calling is gone, and they start to really use Keenan how he can be used as an absolute killer over the middle of the field. On the outside, amazing route runner. Did drop off a little bit when Eckler was there, but I'll dice it up to both Eckler's talent and this offense's inability to let Herbert throw a ball more than 5 yards down the field at some points. He's going to give you production. He's going to stay healthy, contrary to popular belief, and he's tied to a very nice young quarterback in Herbert. I think at 5'8", as a wide receiver too, might not have the age advantage like a Ridley, but it'll definitely give you a production advantage over some of the guys that come afterwards. And at this point, I'm starting to look at quarterback. Have the 105. Worst case scenario, I don't get a quarterback, but I don't think that's what happens, given I think that Chase and Harris go within the top 4. So I'm starting to sweat. I see Stafford come off the board at the 5'11". I'm really sweating. And at the time, I didn't consider this, and looking back now, it's very obvious. The guy at the 101 is taking Trevor Lawrence, who is his quarterback 1. So he doesn't feel the need to take a guy like Ryan Tannehill as his quarterback 2. He'd rather wait on a guy. He ultimately goes Jameis Winston, or maybe like a Carr or Goff for this example. So I can casually take Ryan Tannehill at the 6'5". Very underdrafted, very undervalued. He's giving you quarterback 1, low on quarterback 1, middle and quarterback 1 production at a middle and quarterback 2 price tag. I know he's not as flashy of a name, and the losses of Arthur Smith and potentially Corey Davis could lead to a step back, but I think what he's shown to give you through the air and through the ground occasionally, it's really not much. It is quite minimal, but it is something. I think Tannehill as a quarterback 1 or high-level quarterback 2, depending on how I draft, is a really, really nice piece to have. I think it's a great pick. I think it's a nice value given my team, and I think it's what ultimately brings a good core of my team together. Now, you see guys like DJ Chark, Juju, Claypool, Deontay, the entire Jags and Steelers receiving rooms come off the board to close out the 6th. Don't mind any of those picks. Matt Ryan at the 6'9" is interesting. He'll be a starter for Atlanta. Maybe who knows how long. Could be gone after this year. Goes to a different team if they draft a quarterback to sit behind him. But I don't hate the pick as a quarterback 2 there. Just have an older quarterback room for Sandman. Moving on, a few more young tight ends come off the board. Trend was started around before in round 5. We get 2 more of those like top-end young guys, if you were to call them that, in Fant and Gesicki. Obviously not in that top tier too, but young guys who can produce and have potential. Then you get Tyler Boyd at 7'4", who's not the youngest, but damn, is he going to produce a Burrow next year? I'm mad he wasn't there for me. I probably would have taken him there because I think he's severely underrated, not just in Dynasty, but every year in every format. It doesn't matter. Tyler Boyd's going to produce. I think he was on the wide receiver 10 pace this year before Burrow got hurt, which is absolutely insane for a guy you can find in the 7th or 8th round of a draft. Absolutely nuts. Value play every year. So I go with another receiver, wide receiver 3, round out my group of guys with Robert Woods. Names like Julio, Adam Thielen still on the board, but I like Robert Woods the most. He's going to produce for you. He always does. Wide receiver 1 production at a wide receiver 2 price tag. Given there's not much of a difference between wide receiver like 10 and 15 in points per game, I still like Robert Woods here, especially with Stafford coming into town. I think he's really going to open up this offense. They won't have to resort to play action as much to make up for Jared Goff's shortcomings. Yes, there is a very big margin between those two. I'm not going to argue it. It's just fact. And Stafford's ability to kind of move around and create once structure breaks down, once plan A and B have gone to shit, is going to be very nice for this offense. It gave them another element that simply wasn't there with Jared Goff. So I went with Robert Woods. I think he's going to produce. I think Stafford's going to love him. Following him, you see Thielen come off the board at 7'11". I like that pick. Older guy, bit like Woods, bit like Keenan. Going to produce. People are saying he's going to regress in touchdowns. I beg to differ. Had 14 this year, I believe. Do I think he gets 14 again? Maybe not, but he'll certainly get over 10. 1 point in the year. He had 10 targets, I believe, inside the 10 or 20, turned 8 of them into touchdowns. That efficiency isn't just something you can regress to the average, because that is very clearly above average. If Cousins stays especially, Thielen's going to continue to be a red zone monster in fantasy. No debate about it. Then following that up, more guys go. Carson Wentz comes off the board at 84. Wentz, very polarizing. I have my feelings that he is damaged goods and that if a team trades for him, they'll likely regret it. But getting a starting quarterback as your QB2, possibly QB3, depending on how you draft here, given the rest of his draft, he'll probably go somewhere else. It's not a bad value. I think he's damaged goods, like I've said, but he shows potential. He was an MVP candidate 3 years ago, not too far removed. Granted, there was a catastrophic knee injury in between then and now, but I don't hate this as a quarterback at this point in the draft. And I follow that up with Damien Harris. Sure, there is some receiver talent I could have taken afterwards, like Deebo Samuel, maybe Corey Davis, but I'm not really in love with all of those. So I go with Damien Harris, a guy who I think has very good potential to sneakily be a pretty high-end RB2 this coming year. Cam Newton's going to be gone, who is the leading rusher for us by a country mile. Sony Michel sucks. Rex Burkhead's a free agent, and he was hurt majorly this year. I believe he tore his ACL. And then, who else am I missing? James White, free agent, probably going to be re-signed as a limited third down back, which kind of opens up very quietly, very low-key, a role for Damien Harris to step into a workhorse workload. Maybe not as much on third down, but certainly on first and second down. I know it's always tough with the Patriots running back to have faith in them getting a workload, but as it's shaping up right now, Damien Harris is very clearly, at least as of this moment when I'm recording, things could change. Harris is looking like the alpha running back in this Patriots offense. Following up my Damien Harris pick, more receivers come off the board. Uncle Lenny comes off at 8'10". Got to give him a shout out. Oldest 26-year-old I've ever seen. Bald ass head. 26, 25. He's kind of old. He looks like he's 45. Kind of moves like it too. But damn, did he do good in that Super Bowl on that playoff run. Hats off to Lenny. Kirk Cousins comes off the board here at 9'2", which is interesting. I think if he gets moved to San Fran, how there have been murmurs of that happening, I think his value shoots up. Maybe not to a quarterback 1, although he does always outperform his ADP somehow, but to a very nice high-end quarterback 2. Only thing that worries me is that when your quarterback room is Kirk Cousins and Jared Goff and you have the 111 in a rookie draft, I'm not a big fan of that room in Superflex. I think your potential at quarterback is kind of capped. Maybe you take Mac Jones at 111 if he's there to kind of give your quarterback room some youth and some juice outside of Jared Goff, but not a huge fan of that given his other quarterback. Maybe would have liked a more ceiling play, but I definitely get Kirk there. I think the issue is more Goff than Kirk for me. Corey Davis off the board, Daniel Jones at 9'4". I think this offense is going to take another step forward as Daniel Jones has. I really like Waddle there. Very nice field stretcher, not just another Henry Ruggs who can only run in a straight line. Waddle actually has the ability to move in more than one direction, which is forward. Could open up the field, bump the receivers down a peg so they can all prosper with less attention on them. A guy like Slayton to me is a better 2 than 1. I don't think he has the talent to be a consistent 1. Kind of like Corey Davis actually, but not as talented as Corey Davis. Same situation though. Like Goddard at the 9'5", and Tunyon at the 9'7", specifically because Tunyon has wide receiver and tight end eligibility. Don't know why that's super useful, but never hurts to have. And at 9'8", I took a running back. Wasn't really a fan of any of the ones left on the board at this point, at least up to 9'8". So I'm looking for another young receiver to dart throw, and who else but Darnell Mooney? Mooney is possibly going to be stepping into an alpha workload with Allen Robinson leaving. And this isn't just a Van Jefferson situation where people think a guy's going to step into a workload just because somebody leaves. Mooney straight up stole the number 2 receiver spot from Anthony Miller last year. He was flat out better. He was pretty good, and he was a very good deep threat. He beat guys deep all the time. The only reason you didn't hear about it is because he was overthrown and missed on almost every single one of those deep balls. I'm not saying Carson Wentz is going to be the answer, but it really can't get much worse than Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles, can it? I doubt it. So I'm taking Mooney. Might not be as good of an alpha, more attention, who knows, but I think he's clearly shown his potential to be a nice high upside dart throw in the middle end of the 9th round at this point. Following this up, you see some youth and some old coming off the board. TB12, undisputed GOAT, 9'10", fine quarterback 3. Who knows how long you have him for at this point? Could play another 5 years, could give you 2. It's going to be a nice low-end 1 for you. Don't hate that pick at all. Then it swings back to me at the 10-5, and at this point, I want to grab at least one young flyer tight end because I'm getting the feeling that they're going to start creeping off the board more, given that Goddard and Tunyon just went. So I'm taking Cole Kmet here. I think he's pretty high upside. 2 Bears in a row, actually, just noticed that. Never really like to have a lot of Bears unless they're Allen Robinson, but here we are. The Bears like to use the tight end a lot last year, especially in the red zone with Jimmy Graham. I'm aware Jimmy Graham at this point is a distinguished red zone man as compared to Cole Kmet. But they start to integrate Kmet into the offense last year, and I think he's due for an increased role, even if Graham doesn't leave, but I think he will. And if they bring in Carson Wentz at quarterback, who has shown a liking towards the tight end position with both Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert, whether that be due to him, the offensive system, or both, I think he could really form a nice chemistry with Cole Kmet almost immediately if he comes here. If not, though, I think Kmet is still in line for an increased workload, and at this point, outside of that top tight end tier, you're pretty much just taking dart throws on guys, which I do again in the 11th round with Adam Troutman. I'd probably take Logan Thomas if I don't get sniped. I guess I just had tight end on the brain. Not my proudest pick, given that a guy like Darius Slayton is still on the board, but I'm taking a relatively similar thought process to the one I had with Kmet. Guy in front of him is leaving, and Jared Cook, free agent. Doubt they've re-signed him due to their cap monstrosity. And their quarterback, if it is Taysom Hill next year, cannot throw a football deep. He's going to rely on that short underneath middle game. And Troutman has showed the route running ability a little bit last year at points, flashed, got open underneath, made some pretty nice plays. They used him a lot as a blocker. Maybe they expand his role as a receiver if Jared Cook leaves. I think he's a nice dart throw. Probably could have got him a round or two later. It's the only mistake I made. Not the only mistake I made. It's a very noticeable mistake I made. But I live with it. It was just a mock. You can learn from that. So moseying on over to my last three picks here. Anything that I noticed really importantly coming off the board. Todd Gurley at the 12-1 is just sad. No further comment. And I take Jeff Wilson here at the 12-5. Currently the only San Fran running back I know that is definitely re-signing out of the Big Four. I think McKinnon's gone, Coleman's gone, Mostert's probably going to die at some point on the field next year and miss 8 weeks, which leaves 25-year-old Jeff Wilson. Showed some flashes, looked pretty good when he was the lead guy there last year for a week or two. Had that killer 3-touchdown game, which I actually think came as him as the number 2 in that offense, but he's shown the ability to do well in the San Fran offense. For them, running back is king. There is a worry that if Aaron Jones comes in, he will be the lead back for almost every down, which I'd hope for his sake. For my Jeffrey Wilson, the 12-5 pick sake, kind of don't hope that, but I think he's a nice upside play here, given that there always seems to be an opening at the San Fran running back spot, whether it be due to availability or how they play the position and just injury luck. I don't hate this pick at all. A pick I kind of do hate, though, is Marlon Mack 2 picks later. I get it, we've seen some decent pass-catching potential from him, decent runner, but the Achilles rupture is just really scaring me off. Never really seen it a ton in running backs, but it kind of saps away a lot of your athleticism, explosiveness at points. I don't like that pick, especially on a guy who's going to be no more than a 1B, probably a third option out of the backfield for some team. Don't know who even signs him coming off such a catastrophic injury. Not a huge fan of it, but I guess at this point in the draft, you're just taking dart throws. Following that up in the 13th round, I just take another shot. I definitely take Jacoby Myers if I see him, honestly. Pretty big regret I have looking back at this board. But I take Lynn Bowden, showed some nice flashes on both the ground and through the air last year. It was while everyone was hurt, I'll give you that, but at this point I'm looking for a guy with upside who can work his way into the field in as many ways as possible, and I think Lynn Bowden provides that. I think Miami will bring in more weapons. He probably won't be their lead running back. That might be Myles Gaskin. It might be Najee Harris. It could be someone else. But I think Bowden has the talent to warrant a roster spot and the opportunity to produce in multiple ways if he gets on the field. And I close out my draft with Blake Jarwin. Cowboys just always find a way, don't they? Barring this year, they always have a fantasy-relevant tight end, even though it was the corpse of Jason Witten for a few years. Then Blake Jarwin had a very nice year last year. Got hurt this year, the offense fell apart. I think people are forgetting about him and drafting him so low because he was out for the year, and people are just souring on this offense as a whole after the catastrophe that was last year. Don't let that be you. Don't reach for these guys, but if you can grab them at a value like Jarwin in the 14-5, the Dynasty startup, Amari Cooper in the beginning of the 5th, middle of the 5th, whether you're in 10 or 12-man formats, and Dak probably won't go this high in a non-superflex league. But even then, as a quarterback, 3, 6, 7 and 9 range, I love Dak Prescott there. Don't be that guy. So I took Jarwin. Cowboys tight ends always produce somehow in fantasy. Not sure why, but at this point I take another young dart throw at tight end and hope one of them hits the bullseye. That's going to be it for today, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this first mock draft overview, mock draft review. Hope to bring you a lot more of these as the offseason progresses. Got to find more guys to do them with. Dynasty, 10-man, 12-man, tight end premium, superflex, one quarterback, no IDP though, that's the only one I won't do. Looking to bring a lot of them, get a sense as to where the general public or some guys who are a little more in the know think these players are going to fall, who's going to rise, who's going to fall, where the value is going to be. I'm always going to be a proponent that early running back, late middle receiver is always the plan, but you got to be adaptable, stay on your toes. Can't get too stuck up in one strategy and miss an absolute star coming at you, like I did with Saquon at the 1-8 there. Took the value, took the star, took the stud, got a steal, and here we are. I think it led to a pretty nice draft overall for me. Not sure how I'd grade it looking at it, given that I didn't get a full roster and I'm still relatively new to the whole Dynasty format, so I don't want to speak too soon before I know a lot. Probably give myself a B+ on first instinct. Think I have a nice core, nice room. How I said I wouldn't grade myself, but I got a little bit carried away. Only issue right now is maybe a quarterback 2. Hopefully I can clear that up in the draft. Maybe I could have drafted a little differently, but I digress. Hope you enjoyed, guys. Going to be more videos coming soon. Some like this, some of my more traditional style where I just stare down you for 12 minutes and talk to you about a certain topic or player. That's going to be it for today, guys. See ya.